Well, thank you, Rose, and thank you for coming to this presentation. I'm going to talk to you today about some part of my research that focuses on the use of affirmative action to narrow the gender gap in STEM. So during the last few decades, we've seen a massive increase of women participation in higher education. In most developed countries now, women are either half or more than half of the people that participate in higher education. However, this isn't true for certain fields, and when it comes to the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields, women are vastly underrepresented. So according to UNESCO data, women are only 35% of people currently studying STEM degrees, and this is even lower in engineering. This is a problem in two ways. So first, it limits opportunities for women and for society, in the sense that we're missing some talent out there. And also, it has implications for the gender wage gap because, well, it's one of the causes of the gender wage gap, because STEM degrees tend to be better paid than the degrees that women are more likely to attend, which are in the arts and humanities. So there is a lot of discussion of why does the gender gap exist, and it's of course a very complex question to answer. So there is research, there is a literature that has tried to go through certain options, certain factors, and one of them is student preferences. So this is the idea that women and men think about different things when they choose a degree program. So for instance, men might be more interested in the salary that the job is going to have, while women might be more interested in that they like the subject or that there is certain flexibility. There is also differences in mathematical achievement or how prepared people are to study a STEM degree. This is also a hypothesis that might be true, but the truth is that in the last few years, the gap in academic achievement, especially mathematics achievement, between men and women has been reducing, and the STEM gap still persists. Another option is gender differences in competitiveness. Men tend to be more competitive, and STEM degree programs might be considered also more competitive. And finally, one that's a bit more new is the literature that looks at student beliefs about the relative academic ability, and where we see that men and women with same academic ability tend to think differently as to how prepared they are to study STEM. So a man with the same level of performance than a woman might think that he's better prepared for STEM than a woman. So a lot of different things can play a role. But what I would like to focus on is not so much on the why, but more on what can we do to fix it. And in particular, looking at affirmative action policies as a potential solution. Affirmative action has been used in the past and in higher education to increase participation of groups that have been treated unjustly in the past, in particular in terms of class, race, or caste. And the idea is to provide better opportunities for them, but also there is a second intent that's often mentioned when universities and practitioners implement these type of policies, which is that they would like to see in their universities, in these institutions, the broader benefits of having a more diverse student body. And there is a literature that has informed us on, in terms of race and caste, policies that have been implemented, if they are effective or not at providing better opportunities for those people who might have been more disadvantaged. But there is very little on the second point, which is what happens when we actually have a more diverse student body. Those positive academic and social benefits realized or not. And also there is little that we know in terms of gender affirmative action. What would I say that we need to know about gender affirmative action? Well, we need to know first if it's effective, in the sense of do policies that try to increase participation of women in STEM or in engineering, do they actually manage to increase their participation? Because if it's a matter of not being interested, if it's a matter of preferences, they might not be successful, for instance. Then there is also always, when there is affirmative action, there is a concern of the quality of the institution. Like, are we going to be meeting the students that are ill-prepared? Is the overall quality of the institution decreased, or the education that the institution provides? And also in that line, if the policy works and we have a more gender diverse student body, what are the effects for the peers, for the other students? Will there be positive or negative academic effects? And last but not least, if a policy is successful, can this be scaled up at the national level, for instance, so we can create change that lasts? So what do I do? What I want to show you today is the case of Chile, because Chile is a pioneer in implementing gender affirmative action policies. So in 2014, 2 universities implemented at the same time 2 distinct policies, while the other universities that are part of the same centralized admission system didn't. And in 2024, so 10 years later, one of those policies got scaled up at the national level. And 81% of the STEM degree programs that are part of the centralized admission system implemented the policy. So what I think is that evaluating these policies can offer, like what I try to do in my research is to evaluate these policies, because I think they can offer insights on how these different approaches can help to narrow the STEM gap. So before I tell you about the policies, we all need to be on the same page on how the centralized admission system in Chile works, because it differs. I mean, it's similar to some countries, but different to others. So one thing that's very important is that there is just one centralized admission system where most universities participate, all selective universities participate in it. And what students do is that they write a list of their preferences of what they want to study, from their most preferred option to their least preferred option, and an option constitutes both a university and a degree program. So for instance, the top option for someone may be engineering at the Catholic University, and the second option may be architecture at University of Chile. So that's how options work. The system has clear, objective, transparent rules. Students have to take a test. Everyone takes the same test. It's once a year. It's standardized. And with those tests, there is an application score computed. Students receive their application score, and then they submit their preferences. After that, there is a matching algorithm, which is called Gale-Shapley. It's a deferred acceptance, which means that students, only considering their application scores and their preferences, they're allocated to the degree program for which they have a sufficiently high score and is their most preferred one. So what the policies are about, so policy 1 was implemented by the University of Chile. What it does is that it adds extra slots that are female exclusive. So they go through the same centralized admission process as everyone. They get all the applicants that want to enter the university. They accept the 800s that have the highest possible scores. And after the policy, after accepting those 800, they're also going to take the first 40 women that are right below, like the ones that would have been placed in a wait list. They are automatically admitted. So it's about 4% of an expansion of their total number of slots. This isn't a quota policy in the sense that there is not fixed percentage of women that's going to be at the end of the policy. It could be all men in the regular admission and only 4% women in the extra slots, or it could be all women in the regular admission plus all women in the other 40 slots. So that's why it's not a strict quota policy, but it's an affirmative action policy. The second policy is more nuanced. It was implemented also at the same time by the Catholic University. I would say that the main core point of this making it a gender policy is that they did advertising of it or marketing of it as women in engineering policy. They went to schools, but what they also did was to change to offer majors that are more of interest for women. So they included biomedicine, architecture, and design in engineering programs, and they also increased the number of female faculty members. So to evaluate these policies, as I said, there are two things that we want to know. The direct effects, which is effectiveness, do these policies work or not? Are there more women applying? Are there more women enrolling? The second thing is the further consequences. So what happens after we have more women in an engineering school? What are the academic effects for the peers? So to start with the direct impact, what I do is to see this as if it was natural experiment. So we have universities that are implementing policies, and these two universities would each be one treated unit, and with different treatments each because it's different policies. The other 28 are not treated, so they are part of the control group. And what we do with this different indifference approach is to basically compare these two groups before and after the policy is implemented. By comparing these two groups over time and their trends, what we can do is to isolate the effect of the policy on applications and enrollment and separate it, for instance, from other trends or other shocks or effects that might have happened around that time. So these are the results for, well, first, what happened with applications is that we saw an increase caused by the policy, by each policy, of around 8% of applications from women. But what we also see is that there are more women enrolled, and with the policy number 1, which is the policy that increases, like adds female exclusive slots, we see an 8.4% more women enrolling in that degree as a result of the policy. And out of this 8.4%, only 4% is the direct effect, like the mechanical effect of the female exclusive slots, right? The other 4.4% are women that are coming through the regular admission route. They would have been qualified before, they were just not applying, but now they do. And they are enrolling in the degree. Then the second policy, which is the one that's a bit more nuanced, got also a very good result of 7% increase in their enrollment in their school. When looking at further effects, what I do is to focus on one university in particular, which is the one that implemented the first policy, which is the female exclusive slots. I look at this university because they have a very interesting setting that allows us to isolate the effect of the gender composition of a group into their academic performance, because they randomize students into groups. This is a very special thing that they do. Normally, students in universities aren't randomized to their classes because they choose which classes to take. But here what happens is that all students enter the university and they have to take mandatory subjects on the first year, right? Like then they can choose, but first year, it's all mandatory subjects. And they are literally allocated to classrooms by the university administrators. And I say classrooms because they are actual physical classrooms in which they have all their classes, all their seminars, and they share with the same people all the time. And the data I have is that the university provided for me is in a total of 71 groups, in which there is variation in the composition of women across those groups, which is exogenous because it was randomly allocated, and there is sufficient variation, so there is groups with more and fewer women, that I can estimate the effect of the composition of women on their academic outcomes. And what I look at is grades in different subjects, plus their dropout rates. So I use a peer effect model. It's actually a very simple linear model, But what's important is that is the delta that I'm estimating. This delta is the effect of the proportion of women in the academic outcomes. The Ys, the outcomes are, as I said, grades in different subjects, individual grades, or also dropout. What I find is that for the core subjects, which are math, physics, computer science, as I said, all of these mandatory subjects of the first year, there is no effect of the composition of women on students' grades, except for one course that is called Introduction to Engineering, which is basically about a collaborative engineering project. Students work week by week with a smaller group of 5 people, and they have to create some kind of robotic arm or something in that style. And what we find there is that when there are more women in those groups, there is better performance for both men and women. So this suggests that the composition, the gender composition and the diversity matters when it's about collaborative tasks or more creative tasks, that's where you actually have to interact with your peers. More importantly, and I think this is perhaps the most important result that this policy gave, is that when you look at the dropout rate, so that means people who don't show up anymore, like they don't enroll in the following year. When you look at the dropout rates, we see that when the proportion of women is around 20%, which is what the average was before the policy was implemented, about 3.8% of women drop out of the program after the end of the first year. When the average proportion of women is, when the proportion of women is 28, which is the average after the policy is implemented, about 1.4% of women drop out. So this is a reduction of about 60% in the dropout rates of women in this engineering school. This is a very important result because it shows that the policy has 2 effects to increase women participation in STEM. One is to increase it at the door, right? Like they're opening the door for more women. But the second one is by avoiding leakings, right? Like they are avoiding women to exit, to leak from this STEM pipeline. And then something that I'm excited to tell you about, but actually I have very little results because it's very fresh, is that the policy, this one with the 40 extra slots, was scaled up at a national level in Chile in 2024. So this really just happened. So the process, the students takes the test at the end of 2023, and they receive the results at the end of 2023, and they apply in 2024, so January. So this is really, really fresh. But what we know is that the Ministry of Education offer the option to all STEM degree programs to offer female exclusive lots, and 81% of the degree programs took the option. So there are over 400 programs offering female exclusive slots now. They're all in STEM. And this makes up 7% of the total offer of those programs that offer the slots. And I can only show you the summary stats for now. And what we see is that there is a 16% increase in women applying to STEM degrees as their first option year on year, so comparing 2023 to 2024. 12% more women enrolled in STEM degrees, again, year on year, 2023 to 2024. And overall, because there is also increases of men participating more in STEM, but overall, the proportion of women in STEM in 2023 in Chile was 29% and 31% in 2024. So just what I like you to take home is that there is room for change, there is room for narrowing the gender gap in STEM, and this can be done, for instance, in selective universities. You can increase the number of qualified women to enter STEM degrees. As I show you, most of the increase in participation of women was done through regular admission channels, so women who have qualified nevertheless. And also that having more women in an engineering school increases performance of students in terms of collaborative projects, and more importantly, increases the persistence of women in STEM. The last bit that I show you also shows that there is hope for the feasibility of more wide implementations of these policies, that they can be scaled up and they can actually generate meaningful societal change. And by promoting these policies, we can empower women to thrive in STEM, and hopefully we can also help to unlock their potential and work for a brighter, more innovative future. Okay.